10 o'clock. This is News at 10, live from Jerusalem, as the ceasefire deal between Hamas and Israel bears success for a third day. Hamas releases more hostages, with 17 Israelis and foreign nationals taken out of Gaza to freedom. In return, Israel has released a further 39 Palestinian prisoners from its custody. Hamas now says it's seeking to extend the truce, while President Biden also says he hopes the ceasefire can last as long as possible.
The proof that this is working and worth pursuing further is in every smile and every grateful tear we see on the faces of those families who are finally getting back together again.
Also ahead on News at 10, in central London, tens of thousands of people, including some well-known faces, march in protest against a rise in anti-Semitism. Plus, farewell El Tel. Football unites to remember one of the most gifted English managers of all time. Terry Venables, the man who took England within a kick of the Euro '96 final, dies aged 80. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30.
Good evening, live from Jerusalem. A temporary ceasefire between Israel and Hamas has held for a third day, on which 17 more hostages were released by Hamas, 14 Israelis and dual nationals, and 3 Thais. In return, Israel freed a further 39 Palestinian teenage and female prisoners. Tonight, Hamas has said that it is seeking to extend the ceasefire agreement, which is currently due to expire early on Tuesday morning. And in a call to President Biden, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he welcomed the possibility of freeing more hostages over an extended truce. But Israel would then resume its military operation with full force. Well, the 14 Israelis include 4-year-old Abigail Edan, who lives in the United States and also holds American citizenship. She marked her 4th birthday while in captivity. 40-year-old Hagar Brodach was taken captive with her children in kibbutz Kfar Aza. Her daughter, 10-year-old Ofri, son Yuval, who is 8 years old, and 4-year-old Oriel. 49-year-old social worker Chen Goldstein, who was taken alongside her children, her daughter Agam Goldstein, who is 17, and her son Gal, who is 11, and Tal, who is 9 years old. 84-year-old Elma Avraham, Adrian Siegel, aged 62, and dual citizen Russian-Israeli Ronnie Krivoy, who's 25.
There was no disagreement or delay tonight. For the third day running, a group of hostages were released by Hamas as part of the temporary ceasefire that is holding despite some wobbles. Among them was American-Israeli Abigail Moore Eden. She turned 4 last Friday. Her birthday was spent in captivity, and she will return home an orphan. Both of her parents were killed on October the 7th. The US President Joe Biden welcomed her release.
You know, she's free and she's in Israel now. And so those who are now wrapping Abigail in love and care and the supportive services she needs, she's been through a terrible trauma.
Another of those freed was Ron Krivoy, an Israeli-Russian dual national who is the first male hostage to be released and was reportedly let out after an intervention from Vladimir Putin. And 84-year-old Alma Avraham was airlifted by helicopter straight to hospital in a serious medical condition. There were tears of joy when 21-year-old Maya Regev was reunited with her family at a hospital in Beersheba. But Maya's brother Itai is still being held in Gaza. In total, 14 Israelis and 3 Thai nationals were freed and handed over to the Israeli military. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu took advantage of the ceasefire to visit Israeli soldiers inside Gaza. The truce, in its current form, has only 1 more day to run, and the Israeli government insists the war is not over.
I'm here to say to my friends here, to the fighters here, who tell me the same things, and I repeat this to you, citizens of Israel, we continue until the end, until victory. Nothing will stop us, and we are convinced that we have the power, the strength, the will, and the determination to achieve all the war's goals, and we will.
The IDF has released images of its commanders preparing for the next phase of the war, but things are likely to be far more complex now. As more hostages are being freed, so too are some of those already released starting to leave hospital. Danielle and Amelia Aloni were welcomed home today by crowds lining the streets. And little Emily Hand, who was initially reported dead, has been reunited at last with her big sister. It is these images that will press the Israeli government to continue negotiations if it could result in more releases, and Hamas knows it. Intense negotiations are ongoing behind the scenes to prolong the truce. Now that the process has been proven to work, it will be harder for either Israel or Hamas to reject an extension. But nothing is certain, and the coming hours will be crucial. Alistair Bunkler, Sky News in Tel Aviv.
Well, for a third consecutive day, Israel fulfilled its part of the deal with Hamas today by releasing 39 Palestinian women and teenagers from custody. More than half of those who were freed returned to East Jerusalem tonight, where our international affairs editor Dominique Waghorn spoke to some of them.
We've seen Israel's hostages coming home in a blaze of coverage, but not Palestinian prisoners returning to East Jerusalem as part of the truce.
We come to speak to the family of the prisoners.
Not now. The Israeli police won't allow it.
We need a taxi, though, to get home.
I don't think so. So we can carry on. Please.
The Israelis have banned Palestinians from celebrating the homecoming of their prisoners, and they're threatening them with hefty fines if they do so. We've just tried to talk to the families of some of them coming home tonight, but we've been moved back here by the police.
We tried another home, filming from a distance. Once police had moved on, we found the Abu Ghanem family, welcoming back their 17-year-old son, who'd been held for a year without conviction for throwing stones.
Prison was humiliating, and they came in and beat us ever since the war began. And we were treated like dogs.
It's a gift from God. It's as if it's a miracle.
The longest-serving prisoner to be released so far is Sharouk Dwayat, convicted 8 years ago for allegedly stabbing 2 Israelis. Sharouk is back now with her family in East Jerusalem. She says she'll train to be a lawyer to help those left in jail, though she's worried the Israelis might come for her again.
My biggest fear is to be arrested again, because they've already threatened me with that, and it's possible that the house could be invaded at any moment.
On the West Bank, beyond the reach of Israeli police, prisoners were welcomed by huge crowds. Again, the green colours of Hamas hoist around them with the flags of other Palestinian factions. In Gaza, aid poured in for a third day of ceasefire. Ahmed showed our team the supplies he'd picked up, but says the war has made life much, much harder.
My wife is ill. She needs to have nappies and is fed by a feeding tube. She needs medications, and I don't have any money to buy them. The situation is difficult. There are no toilets, no running water, and no electricity.
The guns may be silent for now in Gaza, but not on the West Bank. 8 Palestinians were killed in clashes there in the last 24 hours. There are fears of the situation there escalating further when the war in Gaza resumes. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News, Jerusalem.
We'll be speaking to Dom in a moment, but first, the ceasefire has finally given doctors the opportunity to focus on some of the injured and ill children in Gaza. Our special correspondent Alex Crawford is in Egypt and has been following a medical mission to evacuate some of those Palestinian children.
These people have waited an awful long time for humanitarian help, some of them for days, weeks. They are some of the most seriously wounded or injured. This patient is coming in on a stretcher. They didn't have any idea what these injuries were going to be before they were presented with the patient. And they're going to be taken on board this basically flying hospital, which has been kitted out with the top-notch, most sophisticated medicines, emergency equipment, and of course an extremely versatile and described as a world-class team of medics and paramedics who are going to fulfill all their medical needs. As you know, the Gaza Strip has been smashed, the health infrastructure has been smashed to bits over the past 5 weeks of Israeli bombardments, with only 22 out of the 36 hospitals completely out of operation. So a number of these people have just not received, or very little, medical help at all so far. There are 88 patients on this particular Mercy flight. They're hoping in the end to try and bring back at least 1,000, maybe more. They'll be given lots of medical help whilst they're in the United Arab Emirates. It could take several months, in which time they're hoping by that time the situation will have been stabilised a bit more within the Middle East.
That was our special correspondent, Alex Crawford there. Well, let's speak to our international affairs editor, Dominic, who joins us now. And Dom, I mean, one more day left of this truce, but of course a lot of international diplomacy and activity going on to try and extend it.
Yes, well, we've heard from both Hamas and the Israeli Prime Minister today saying that they are both open to the idea of extending this 4-day truce by another day or two. Benjamin Netanyahu, in a conversation with Joe Biden, said he's open to the idea, but at the end of that extension, however long it lasts, Israel will return to the war with full power, he says. Now, the Qatari negotiators say they believe there are another 40 women and children being held not by Hamas but by different groups in Gaza. And if Hamas can come up with lists of new hostages that could be released after day 4, which is tomorrow, then we could have a day 5 or 6 of the ceasefire being extended. Why are there so many women and children being held not by Hamas but by other groups? The reason for that, we believe, and the Qataris told me this 4 weeks ago, that when Hamas burst through the fence on October the 7th, they didn't expect Israel to just leave those breaches open, because Israel struggled so long that day to regain control. And through those gaps, a number of other groups got through, not just guerrilla groups, not just militant groups, but possibly smuggler gangs, real unsavoury groups getting out of Gaza and seizing Israeli women and children and other hostages, regarding them as a kind of currency they could then use for power games in Gaza. So if Hamas wants to get those groups, those hostages out of the hands of those groups, they're going to have to do some kind of a deal. Now, they've had a month at least to work out where they are and bring them in. This truce was to allow them the time to do that, to find them and haggle over them and get them back into a position where they can now say to Israel, we're going to play for more time and we want more ceasefire days. So it's down to that ability to do that. And if they can do that, then this truce can be extended.
Well, Don, we'll have to wait and see. As you say, day 3 down, one more day to go, and anxiety-inducing, and so many people are waiting to see what happens next. That's it from the team and I here in Jerusalem. Back to you, Barbara, in London.
Yelda, thank you. Tens of thousands of people have marched through London in protest against what organisers said was a more than tenfold increase in anti-Semitic crimes since the attacks of October 7th by Hamas. The marchers, who included many famous faces, were joined by Boris Johnson, but not by the far-right activist Tommy Robinson, who was arrested as he tried to join the protest. From central London, our communities correspondent Becky Johnson reports.
Thousands of British Jews and their supporters were led through the streets of London by celebrities, here to condemn the rise in anti-Semitism since the start of the Israel-Gaza war.
I'm out here today because Jews in this country feel scared. They feel under attack. Some people are scared to go to the workplace. They're scared to send their children to school.
Racism in this country, especially when there's an incitement to hatred, is illegal. It's also immoral. It's also unpleasant. And I'm here to march against it because I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
There's going to be moderate people on pro-Palestinian marches, and there's going to be moderate people here. And what I'm here to do is to encourage moderate people to stand up and have a voice.
Among the crowd, Boris Johnson showed his support. Organisers had asked politicians to join them. But controversial far-right activist Tommy Robinson had been told he would not be welcome. Police had warned if he left this cafe to join the crowd, he'd be moved on.
Why am I being dispersed? Leonard, why am I being dispersed?
Tommy, why did you come when the organisers told you to stay away?
I'm here to do my job as a journalist. I'm at work. I'm at work.
He was led away and later arrested. A pat on the back from a supporter, while others were glad to see him go. He's trying to align himself with your cause. What would you say to him?
This march is about tolerance, it's about inclusion, it's about kindness. Anyone who wants to use it in order to exploit hate or sow division is not welcome.
This was the largest march against anti-Semitism in Britain since the war began, and police were out in force. Organisers say the pro-Palestinian demonstrations that have been held here in the capital in recent weeks have made London a no-go zone for British Jews. And they say it's a sad fact that many Jews feel London is no longer a safe place for them. But there was acceptance here that many hundreds of thousands of people have been compelled to take to the streets in support of Palestinians.
We obviously sympathise with innocent people of any description caught up in any conflict anywhere in the world, and we really mean that. But it's not okay to therefore equate and then attack British Jews for a conflict that's happening halfway across the world.
People are allowed to have free speech, but I think when you have from the river to the sea in the Jewish community, that means one thing, and that's what we're quite fearful about today.
The war is creating tensions across the UK, with each community keen for their voices to be heard. Becky Johnson, Sky News, Central London.
In the US, 3 young university students of Palestinian descent have been shot on their way to a family dinner in Burlington in Vermont. The families of the 3 men are asking for the authorities to investigate it as a hate crime after it was claimed they were shot for wearing the Palestinian keffiyeh. Well, if it hadn't been for Germany's legendary prowess at penalties, Terry Venables could well have taken England to their first European Championship final. The former football manager died yesterday at the age of 80. He was praised by many of his players, including Gary Lineker, who called him the best coach he had ever worked with. Our sports correspondent Rob Harris looks back at his life.
From shock to celebration, at the club where Terry Venables did it all, winning trophies as a player and manager before running Tottenham. And at Wembley, a tribute to the colourful, charismatic character remembered so fondly for nearly bringing football home. Euro 96, with Venables the mastermind behind one of England's great sporting summers.
It's coming, football's coming.
We'll go on getting back, so getting back, so getting back, so getting back.
It's coming.
The victories, particularly over the Dutch, as memorable as the goal celebrations. Penalty heartache against Germany, denying England a place in the Wembley final. And it was the end of Venables' 2-year reign as 3 Lions manager. But players miss Venables' tactical influence on England.
Obviously, it's an extremely sad day, and one of my great regrets with England and disappointments was that he was unable to continue after Euro 96. He was a huge personality and character, larger than life, and I think at the time too big for the FA to handle.
A player with Chelsea, Tottenham and Queen's Park Rangers, he truly shone in the dugout. This was a different era, impressing at Crystal Palace and QPR, earned one of the biggest jobs in the game. At Barcelona, El Tel as he became known, won the La Liga title in 1985. He brought Gary Lineker to the Catalan club, and they would link up again at Tottenham. FA Cup glory was celebrated in 1991.
Probably I was lucky enough here probably to have about 10 different managers. I think Terry was probably, of all of them, from all sides of it, he's probably the best manager I ever had here.
The coach turned chief executive at Tottenham, but the relationship with owner Alan Sugar soured. Unscrupulous business practices stained the reputation of this footballer-turned-entrepreneur. The author of novels, a nightclub owner, even a crooner. Terry Venables had the presence and personality that brought so much joy to football fans. A visionary who just wanted to entertain.
And Rob joins us now live from Wembley. And Rob, we can see the tribute paid to Terry Venables there at Wembley Stadium behind you. What do you think he'll be remembered for the most?
Well, Terry Venables really made English football feel good about itself again. He galvanised a dressing room and a nation at Euro 96. He really had that tactical nous to get the best out of the stars of Lineker, Gascoigne and Shearer, and those euphoric performances really captured the age. The era of Britpop, the first home football tournament since the World Cup in 1966. And it didn't end with a trophy like that World Cup, but it was the launchpad for football as we know it today. Really a mood that really captured the nation, moving on from the failure to qualify for the World Cup in 1994 and the dark days with issues of fans in the 70s and 80s. And it was during that period where Venables was really coming to his own as a coach, most notably at Barcelona, where he was being remembered today as a showman, but also a tactical genius. The fact he had that ability to change game and innovate with formations is something that he will be remembered for. But of course, there were the other parts of his game that caused some issues in the boardroom battles, the legal battles he had to fight as he pursued that completely other career away from the pitch as a businessman. And he didn't want to be pigeonholed either as a player or as a coach. He really wanted to pursue that other career as well, far beyond the pitch. But what we're getting a sense of tonight is English football has lost one of its great. Just weeks after mourning Bobby Charlton, the death of Terry Venables is a time to reflect on some of his achievements. He really was a big personality, but one with a big brain, and a brain that helped to change English football for the better.
Rob Harris speaking to us there in Wembley. Rob, thank you. An asylum seeker who escaped the UK after 5 years of torture in a Syrian prison has told Sky News he was so traumatized by the long wait for a Home Office decision on his case that he attempted to take his own life. It comes as new government figures show there are more than 125,000 outstanding asylum claims, higher than this time last year. A warning that the report by our political correspondent Amanda Akas includes images of injuries and references to suicide.
Omar's arms are riddled with 250 shotgun pellets, causing him constant pain. He was fired on by the Syrian army at a pro-democracy protest in 2012. And then arrested, imprisoned and tortured.
They took me underground and started beating me, torturing me. They had pipes, thick water pipes, and they used those pipes to beat me with. I was blindfolded. They handcuffed my hands and hung me up for hours.
We've changed Omar's name to protect his family. He escaped prison thanks to a bribe paid by his father and fled to the UK in November 2020. But during the long wait for an asylum decision, more than 2 years, his mental health suffered and he attempted to take his own life.
I was so disappointed. I was under the impression that Great Britain is great, and if I get to Great Britain, that I will not face injustice. But it wasn't like that. For 2 years, they didn't tell me they were not going to grant me asylum, and that was torture.
Omar certainly isn't alone. Nearly 40,000 asylum seekers have been waiting more than a year for a decision.
The government's strategy to reduce the future backlog is to discourage most asylum seekers from coming to the UK at all through the threat of deportation to Rwanda. Well, that's been blocked in the courts for now. The Prime Minister says he's determined to push ahead with plans for a legally binding treaty with Rwanda, as well as emergency legislation expected in the Commons, perhaps as soon as next week.
We know that a sense of powerlessness, a lack of autonomy, is linked very strongly to mental illness. I've had many clients who have been forced onto small boats at gunpoint and seeing other people drown, who've actually said that the waiting and not knowing is a worse torture than what they've been through.
Omar's claim has now been rejected, though he has been granted a temporary right to stay in the UK for 2 years, but can't bring his family.
Can anybody live without his children and wife? It's not easy. Sometimes I think it would just be better for me to go back to Syria.
And what would happen if you had to go back to Syria?
They will execute me.
The Home Office say they ensure the vulnerabilities of asylum seekers are considered at every stage, and they're on track to clear the backlog of cases from before June 2022 by the end of this year. But for those in limbo, the wait is bleak. Amanda Akas, Sky News.
Well, if you or anyone you know is affected by the reference to suicide in that report, you can call the Samaritans on 116 123 or email joe@samaritans.org. And if you scan the QR code on your screen right now, you can listen to our latest Politics at Jack and Sam's podcast. This week, our deputy political editor, Sam Coates, and Politico's UK editor, Jack Blanchard, look ahead to Rishi Sunak and the King's trip to COP28 in Dubai. Remember, of course, you can subscribe to Politics at Jack and Sam's wherever you get your podcasts. Get latest sport now from James at Sky Sports News.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
Welcome to the Roast restaurant here in central London. We are lucky enough today to be joined by 3 elite athletes. Now they're going to be cooking a cultural dish all related to their heritage. It's going to be fun. Let's go see who they are. Right, we're very lucky. We found a gap in the training schedule of a great British Olympic athlete. Lavia Nilsson's joined us in the kitchen, cooking for us today. What have you got for us, Lavia?
So this is a traditional Sudanese dish. That's my mum's heritage. It's called mahshi in Arabic, but it's basically a stuffed vegetable dish. It's got rice, and we're doing a vegan version today with some brown lentils instead of mince meat. So yeah, really excited about it. My sister and I, we learned from our mum, you know, the value of a home-cooked meal.
And you're sort of growing up in your household, I think you said your mum was Sudanese and Egyptian, and your dad was from Denmark, right? So quite a multicultural household.
Yeah, my mum, you know, she taught us to appreciate food from every culture, mainly Sudanese food. We never sat in front of the television. We always sat on a dining table, always talking about school and sport and everything like that. So. And the good thing about my heritage is that the Sudanese diet is kind of influenced by both African and sort of Mediterranean diet. And we all know Mediterranean diet is really good for you. So I always say, like, herbs can add a lot of flavour to your dish. So we're actually going to use lentils for this dish, which makes it completely vegan, which is great. We're also going to add our herbs at the same time. Get the flavour in there.
Look at that, come on.
And one last thing, the holy grail of black cooking, the Maggi cube. Got to add that for flavour. Because the herbs already add a lot of flavour, we don't need to add too much seasoning.
So, Lav, you've got a bit of time off at the moment. Like I said, we're very lucky to sort of catch you in this break that you have in training. What do you get up to when you've got that bit of time off to sort of down tools?
I think, you know, because I travel so much for work, like you mentioned, I don't really get to see my friends and family that often.
You're not getting emotional, by the way. It's just super hot.
It's super hot. The kitchen's terrible, it's the onions. So I'm going to stay at home, spend some time with my friends and family. I think the most important part of the off-season break is the emotional side of it. You know, there's so much adrenaline and so many nerves that go into competing at the world stage. So sometimes just switching off from that and being a normal person is the best thing that you can do. So yeah, I'll be spending a lot of time with my friends and family at home. So I think I'm just going to use 2 peppers today. And you want to just take out the inside. And then, yeah, just stuff these peppers nice and tight, so really get it in there. Okay, and then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to drizzle it in some tomato passata. And then once this cooks on the stove, don't need a lot, it will sort of caramelise. So it will look better than that. It will caramelise and it will brown a little bit. There we go. Mahshi, stuffed peppers, loads of protein, loads of carbs, flavourful dish.
Right, Sasha Corbin, former England and Barbados netball player. Thank you so much for joining us in the kitchen. What have you got for us today?
I want to do like prawns, rice, some coleslaw, and add some plantain for a bit of a side dish.
So we've got a bit of a mix of health, bit of flavour, bit of spice.
100%,
Liking the sound.
All the Caribbean flavours.
Well, are you finding now that you're retired, you've got a bit more time to cook and be creative in the kitchen?
Listen, I've been traveling the world, man. I've been enjoying it. I've been enjoying other cuisines. But when I am home, yes, I definitely love to cook. I've been enjoying that as well. And we're going to put the garlic in. You want the garlic to be...
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
That was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by the Daily Mirror's political editor, John Stevens, and the barrister and former government minister, Anna Soubry. We'll be right back.
A really special prize. My photography shows a different perspective of the ocean. It is, in this case, a coral reef full of light. For me, it shows hope, the light that the ocean has even when everything seems dark. It was one of the most challenging photos in my career because of the way the photo was taken. For me, it was a really special moment, and now the entire world can see that moment in a picture. So for me, it's really important to be here and show this picture, right? The moment, I just enjoyed the moment. I was with a friend during a night dive because the photo was taken during a night dive at 11 p.m. With that UV light, and in this case was a really strong current. And I said to my friend, okay, you can hold the light for me. And I hold with my hand another rock. And with the other hand, I took the picture. And in that moment, I was just enjoying and trying to use the same technique as you photograph the stars, but in this case, under the ocean. So in that moment, I was just enjoying. And after, when I saw the results, I said, okay, maybe this one can be a really powerful photo. And it was, because I get selected on the Environmental Photographer of the Year. I want, with this photo, the people can be connected to the ocean, to feel closer. Every photo I took is to make that, to feel closer and closer and closer to people, to love the ocean. And after, then can take care about that, about the ocean and the species. The ocean is the most important thing we have on our planet, I think. So in each picture, I want to showcase that importance that the ocean has.
Five of us have made it out of the car.
Welcome to Backstage, the film and TV podcast.
This is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. First, though, our top stories. Hamas has released a further 17 hostages on the third day of a truce with Israel. In return, Israel has released a further 39 Palestinian prisoners from custody. And the former England football head coach, Terry Venables, has died at the age of 80. Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with the Daily Mirror's political editor, John Stevens, and the barrister and former government minister, Anna Soubry. Welcome both. So let's see what is on some of those front pages. Well, The Guardian reports on hope the ceasefire in Gaza will hold as the third exchange of prisoners and hostages takes place. That's also the lead for the FT, which says Hamas must find dozens of hostages if the truce is to be extended. The Metro leads with the passing of the former England manager Terry Venables, with the headline, Farewell Tell. That's also on the front page of The Star, which says the Three Lions legend dies at the age of 80. His death is also the main story for The Sun, which says he was one tell of a fella. The I newspaper says millions are facing higher taxes after being dragged into a higher rate. The Mail leads with the march against anti-Semitism, saying no war cries, no angry chants, just solidarity with the UK's fearful Jews. And the reminder that by scanning the QR code that you'll see on screen during the program, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by John Stevens and Anna Soubry. Again, welcome both. Okay, let's start with The Guardian, the front page. Hopes that Israel and Hamas truce can hold as third exchange takes place. Of course, the third exchange of hostages and prisoners has taken place, but the deadline for this particular truce to end would be Tuesday morning unless it's extended. Anna, what do you make of it?
To be honest with you, I don't know what to make of all of this, but The Guardian says it looks like the truce can hold. And, I mean, this is obviously coming from, understandably, from what America seems to be saying. And obviously, all of us hope that the truce could hold because we want these hostages to be released. I have to tell you, the thing I take away from this Guardian story is what Netanyahu says. And he says, we're continuing until the end, until victory. Nothing will stop us. I don't know what is victory. I think that is one of the things that certainly concerns me. Because is victory going to be the release of all the hostages? Because there's a hell of a lot more still to be released. Or is victory getting rid of Hamas? Is it taking over Gaza? Is it bombing the place to smithereens?
Because, of course, among the hostages are many soldiers, which, you know, if we look at past negotiations for Gilad Shalit, who was a soldier released years ago, I think they had to release 1,027 Palestinian prisoners. So I think that's going to be drawn out. What have you made of the article?
I mean, there are some amazing stories we've had in the last few days that... Today, we obviously had that 4-year-old girl, the US-Israeli dual national, Abigail Eden, who was released. And her story is just absolutely horrific. She was the little girl who she saw her parents shot and killed in front of her, and her other sibling were hiding in the wardrobe. And you just think, it's been 50 days now since those awful attacks at the start of October. This little girl was 3 when she was captured. Just imagine being a little 3-year-old girl separated from your siblings and your parents, and then you come out and you find out that you're never going to see your parents again. And we can talk about the geopolitics, we can talk about the kind of joy of people being able to see their relations again, but that is just going to be something that totally scars her for the rest of her life. And you think, as Anna said, there were 240 people who we think were taken hostage, and we've had, how many have we had out about now? Is it 39?
No, I think it's about 57. If you take in the foreign nationals, as well, it's about 50. I did the maths, and it's about 57. So there's an awful lot more.
There's an awful lot still in there who have been through absolutely torture.
Absolutely. And, you know, when it comes to the little children, we have no idea how they were taken care of because, you know, taking care of a 3-year-old is not easy. So we don't know sort of what happened to these children. But speaking about the release of further hostages, the FT deals with it in its front page. So let's look at the front page of the FT. Hamas must find dozens of hostages if truce is to be extended, says Qatar. Qatar, of course, with Egypt and the US, one of the countries trying to sort of arrange the negotiations. what is the problem highlighted by the FT here?
Yeah, so as you say, Qatar has been very important in negotiating this truce and negotiating to get some of these hostages released. As we say, about 49 of the 240 have so far been released. They've been releasing women and children. But the concern that is raised by the Prime Minister of Qatar in this FT piece is they think there's about 90 women and children who are taken in total. This is about another 40 to be still come out. And the concern is that those 40 aren't being held by Hamas. They're actually being held by other groups. We know that when the fence was breached on October the 7th, that it wasn't just Hamas who were going across, it was other militant groups. And so, as much as Hamas is a terrorist organisation, they have been able to be brought to the table. There have been intermediaries that we have seen people who are being held by them released. But the concern from this article is that those other 40 are not being held by Hamas. They don't know exactly where they are. And so in order for this truce to continue, the scenario that's been put forward is that for every 10 Israelis that are released, the truce will be extended by a day. But the concern being raised by Qatar here is there might be the desire to extend this truce, but they just might not be able to find 10 more people a day to be able to let out.
Yeah, and you see, I mean, I'm cynical. I mean, is Hamas saying this? Because the truth is that a large number of those hostages are actually dead. And dead
Which in
at
fairness
their
they have
hands.
said, but they've also said that some of them have died because of Israeli bombardments. That's something that they've claimed. You know, there's no way of verifying this, obviously.
Well, I'm deeply cynical about anything Hamas says, but so are they? Is this a convenient excuse because the truth is that they've murdered these other people as well, or is it? Is it actually true? And this shows that they don't have the control over Gaza. That it's not that people would want them to have, but it shows that actually there are other groups of people who we have even less knowledge of and certainly won't come to any negotiation, won't go to Qatar and talk sensibly to Qatar about how do we release these people. So just this whole thing is, every way you look at it, I just think it's nightmarish. I mean, it's joyful that people are finally going home, but the overall picture, I think, is a nightmare. And I think, as we have talked before, none of us know what the end game is. Most of all, Netanyahu and his dreadful government. They don't know what the end game is either.
Let's focus back here in the UK, front page of the Daily Mail. It's about the anti-Semitism march in London today. No war cries, no angry chants, just solidarity with the UK's fearful Jews. Here it says 100,000 march against anti-Semitism. Other figures were around 60, 70,000, but certainly an enormous number of people and some very high-profile faces as well.
Yeah, and one of the things that we have seen in this country has been the concerning rise of both anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, and that there have been people who have just wanted to bring poison into our country and into our debate. We saw that idiot Tommy Robinson today being arrested on the march, again, trying to inflame tensions. They just want to take advantage of this, and clearly those people today were there standing firmly and saying that we don't want to see anti-Semitism in our country. And I think you look at the figures, in October this year, there were 554 reports of anti-Semitic offences, and that compares to just 44 in the same period last year. So there's been a massive rise in this, and I think it is good that people are willing to stand up and say, we don't want that in this country.
Quite right. And before all of this happened, there was this rise in anti-Semitism. And I always remember going out canvassing, campaigning in a part of London where it's large Jewish population. This is about 2 or 3 years ago. And talking to ordinary Jewish people on their doorsteps who were telling me that they had never felt as frightened, as intimidated, that they couldn't go to shul in the way that they had done. And this was a genuine fear that had not existed at that level, on that scale, even before all of what's happened in Gaza. And it's real. And Britain's Jews feel very much under threat in a way they haven't for many, many decades.
There's a lot of stories of many Jewish people not wearing anything that would identify them as
Yes.
Jewish, whether it's a little
Yes.
pendant with the Star of David or a skull cap, or
That's
lots
right.
of stories.
But this is not new, but it is now even worse.
Yeah, they're talking about a tenfold increase of anti-Semitic crimes. So incredibly worrying, but a massive turnout in the march, which was overwhelmingly, obviously, peaceful after Tommy Robinson was sent away. Now let's go to the Metro, page 7. A hug of pure joy. And this is, again, the story of a little girl. Anna, tell us about this.
So this is a remarkable story for many reasons. Thomas Hand, who is Emily's father, you might remember, believed that Emily was dead. And then he found out that she was being held as a hostage. And that terrible dilemma as to almost which... Because he must have... You know, he thought she was dead, she mourned, and then he found that she was a hostage. Anyway, she's no longer a hostage. She is Israeli-Irish citizen, and she's home, and it's glorious, isn't it? But 50 days in a tunnel.
Again, because then she had her birthday, I think.
She had her 9th birthday, didn't she?
There's some
and she's going to have
quotes
loads of balloons, and he's going to throw a great party.
John, forgive me, we're going to have to go to a break, but I'm sure we will talk about this story later. Thank you both. And coming up, The Great Showman. We'll discuss next the death of one of the most gifted English managers of all time.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Breached the road. There is a lot of gas being fired all around us. शांति से इनको समझाओ वरना ये हम लोग It is an absolute carnival kind of atmosphere out here for Prime Minister Modi's decisive victory. These students are defying the prohibitory orders, and now they're going to be arrested. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. The roads have been inundated. The only way out is to get people by boat. What is feared that over 200 people might have died because of these landslides. This on any given day would have been bustling with people, but today it's absolutely deserted. This is one of the most sensitive areas of northeast Delhi where there's been clashes. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview. With me in the studio are the Daily Mirror's political editor, John Stevens, and the barrister and former government minister, Anna Soubry. Welcome again. Now, let's take a look at the front page of the Mirror. No surprises, I guess. The Great Showman. And let's look at some of the other front pages, because then we'll discuss it. It's obviously all the same story. If we look at the front page of The Sun, coming up, One Tell of a Fella, and the Daily Star, farewell to El Tel. So not surprising there, Anna, that Terry Venables and his death at the age of 80 making the front pages of many of the newspapers.
Yeah, you see, there will be quite a few people who'll say, oh, yeah, I sort of remember Terry Venables, yeah, and El Tel, because he went to Barcelona, you see, and then he took Gary Lineker to Barcelona. But he is of a certain type at a certain time in English football. So the first thing to say about Venables is that he played at the highest level. In fact, he holds a record because he's the only person to have played for England at every level that was then available, including as an amateur as well as a schoolboy. And that's just a throwaway, but he then became something which is quite unusual. So he was a first-class player who then became a first-class manager, hugely respected. And he was, as the Mirror says, he was the great showman, because he was a bit of a geezer, was, you know, El Tel. He was a bit of a geezer, but he was very, very good at what he did. And he was one of the first British managers actually to go into Europe. And at that time, the other thing to say about him, of course, was that he revived the miserable fortunes of English football, international football, at a time when things had not gone well for us. And he just became a symbol of hope because he was so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Euro 96 obviously was in England. That's the tournament when he was managing the England team. We got to the semi-finals. Obviously, it went down to penalties.
Yeah.
With who you know who.
But also, he managed some quite big personalities in Euro 96. When we think of the players and when we think of the culture around football at the time, quite different to what we have now.
Yes, yes and no. I mean, you still have these fantastic characters. I mean, Klopp always... I just adore Jurgen Klopp. He's the manager of Liverpool. And then you've got Pep. I'll just call him Pep because I don't pronounce his surname. But you do have these fabulous characters. But the thing about Venables was that he was a Brit. He was English, and he was just of that generation because, as I say, he was a bit of a geezer. He was a bit of a man of the people and all of that as well. But then that's my terrible impersonation.
The other point made in one of the other papers is that back when he was a player, people weren't earning the vast sums they were now. And so he became well known for his money-making schemes. One of them was talking about how he came up with this hat with artificial hair coming down called a thingamywig. Just because he was on a low salary, he was playing football and needed to come up with these get-rich-quick schemes on the side.
Yeah, and remember, football, you're absolutely right. I mean, as I say, he played for England as an amateur. And they didn't earn anything like the money that they do nowadays, but they were expected to perform at the very highest of levels. And so a lot of those great names, like Jackie Charlton, did go into other things to try to supplement their income, frankly. A great man, and as I say, very much of his time.
Very loved.
Yeah, and a great loss, actually, and a lot of people from a lot of clubs that he was associated with will be genuinely sad at his passing. And rightly so.
We have 1 minute to look at taxes. So, yes, front page of the Eye. We'll need more than a minute, but that's what we have. Millions face higher taxes until election. It says Jeremy Hunt cannot cut that stealth tax, basically the higher rate of taxes some people are being dragged into. Tell us more about the story and what you made of it, John.
Yes, I think this is going to be a big problem for the government. Obviously, they hope that they can go into the election, promise tax cuts, and everyone will say, hooray, they're cutting our taxes. But people aren't stupid. They know that over the last few years, their taxes went up, and they know who was in the Treasury. It was Rishi Sunak putting up those taxes.
Yeah, and here it says the Chancellor just doesn't have any headroom in the economy, despite the drop in inflation. That's what the Eye is going for.
Absolutely. And, I mean, all of this sort of stuff, as John knows better than anybody, is all going to hot up as we move into the last 12 months of this government and going towards that general election.
Anna, John, we're going to have to leave it there, but I'll see you again in the next hour. Now let's take a look at the weather.